Hello everybody and welcome back. But before we give our final thoughts, we have some more stuff we have to go through. First off, it's time for Dwibs to shine because now he gets to read Gongora's journal. Basically, everybody, we can explore Gongora's mansion that's in the game, and there's two specific points in the mansion where we find the Gongora's journal in the study and in the magic experimentation laboratory. So basically, since Dwibs didn't get much opportunity to play Gongora, let's have him read Gongora's journal. Alright, so we'll start with the entry in the study. Dwibs, if you please.
Okay. Eternity is amazing. To not have fear of death. As long as I am in this world, I am immortal, akin to a god. I am this world's time and history in one person. However, to remain so, I must destroy the Tower of Mirrors. But if I do, it will break the link to the power of my home world. And I will lose the magic energy in this world. If that happens, my immortality will be swept along in the flow of time. I need to create a magic energy engine in this world to replace the Tower of Mirrors.
And there you go.
An engine would stamp out the interference from my home world and give me access to even more magic energy here. First, I must establish a power base to ensure that this world runs according to my will. The royal house of Uhra. I can position myself into that house to gain power and manipulate the people. With that power and the magic energy, my place as a god shall be guaranteed.
You know, it would be funny if you could go to Gongora's mansion, like, early in the story, you read this journal and Kaim's like, whatever. He's still an amnesiac at that point. Like, that would be sending some red flags my way, but okay.
I wonder if the evil megalomaniacal guy with a god complex I should be worried about.
But Pedro, he was our friend.
Was he? Was he really?
Technically, again, that's mostly because what we've just read is technically the second entry. The first one actually explains, how they got here.
Okay.
I will say this, though. This entry at least does explain more his motivations and the way he goes about doing it.
Oh, he does. Also, the first one does, Jova. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Like I said, this diary basically serves to answer some of your questions.
Basically. Alright, Dwibs, whenever you can, please start reading the Magic Experimentation Laboratory entry.
Alright. I have been sent on a mission. I am not from this world. However, I have been sent to investigate this world. I have teleported across time and space. My consciousness continued even after I took on a physical form and remains to this day. My home world and this world, for some reason, the two worlds seem to be linked on the same axis, across space and time. Our world was becoming extremely unstable. Reports had begun to circulate that it would collapse. We believe this to be caused by interference from another world, this world, that was on the same axis as ours. Our pure, untarnished world was being warped by some unknown force, not unlike a virus destroying a living being. Over the course of time, we realized that this virus could well be a soul or spirit. The interference from the other world was from the souls of its inhabitants. They were producing some form of energy that was distorting our world. Why did it have such an influence? To understand the cause of this phenomenon, to study this interference, we established a quantum teleporter, a means to send our consciousness to this other world. And so we came to investigate. Including myself, there are 5 investigators. The others are Kaim Arkanar, Seth Balmore, Ming Numara, and Sarah Sizzlehart.
So all this time, it was just their equivalent of NASA's step to the moon.
Basically.
Or Fan 46 expedition to Dimension X.
We arrived here without memories of our home world, and now we live among the native inhabitants of this world while we carry out our mission. 1,000 years was chosen as a time frame sufficient to develop a deep understanding of this world's inhabitants. The way we arrived, with our memories locked away, has allowed us to become like the people we live among. However, I awoke to the memory of this mission some days ago. I am leaving this recording so that this world may know that I existed. Given that time flows differently on the two worlds, we shall appear to neither age nor die on this world. About the 1,000 years of our investigation is the equivalent to the passing of only a single year in our home world. With the difference in the flow of time, we live much longer lives than those around us. By immersing ourselves in the history, culture, thoughts, and habits of this world, we succeeded in gathering detailed data. We will transmit our experiences to our home world, in the hopes that it will give us the means of saving it. An unexpected result of our mission is that the Tower of Mirrors is causing a variety of odd changes in the natural order of this world. Wild animals run amok, and there are many sightings of monstrous creatures. The natural magic energy of this world has changed. This may in fact be a blessing. Magic energy has dramatically improved the lives of these people. When our consciousness was reconstituted within our new bodies, there was a resonance within the magic energy. The possibility that our existence has imparted even greater strength to this world's magic energy is very likely.
Which also means you were responsible for all the crap that was going on in the world, too.
Yes, second Jova. Go on, Dweebs.
Oopsie. We have seen much in our 1,000 years here, which brings us to the true nature of the virus. The lives and history of the people here are extremely ordinary, and we have seen many dynasties rise to power and fall again into oblivion, as if they were nothing but trivial occurrences. And yet the existence of the virus on our world shows that the events on this world had a tremendous impact, making a history that will never be recorded in any book here. The feelings that dominate the minds of the people of this world, their hopes and desires, their love and their hatred, their very lives and deaths, the events that bring fear or happiness to their every moment, all of these resulted in massive waves of something that interfered with our home world. The hearts and minds of the people is what moves this world. At certain times, this was evident by the feelings of affection towards others. At other times, it was shown by the unrestrained drive to satisfy a great ambition. In the time we have lived among the people of this world, we have realized that these feelings, previously unknown to us, profoundly affect them. And the effects of these feelings are causing the massive energy waves that are affecting our home world. From our standpoint, these feelings are simply a virus, but in the course of 1,000 years, we have found them to be a very seductive virus. While here in this world, I have been infected by the virus of feeling, and have consequently attained powerful magic energy. To abandon this would be grievous and painful. To even think this way shows how deeply the virus has infected me. The virus's seduction has been quite satisfying, and it still is.
Or how
Basically,
I learned to stop worrying and love the bug.
Kinda, but if you notice, Jova, this first major entry of Gongora's diary is less about maniacal laughtering and conquering and more genuine documenting, which kinda implies that the Gongora we find in the game is genuinely just someone who was genuinely corrupted by all of this and has gone insane.
You know, we compare this to Sonic with Jansen being Knuckles, but it seems like Gongora had a bit of what Professor Gerald had going on for him. He started off legit, but even he started to notice he was starting to slip insanity until the point where all that was left was madness. So if I understand correctly, what happened was that their homeworld was being afflicted by this quote-unquote virus because they were on the same axis as, like, our world, essentially. So this implies that feelings from our world were leaking over into the Immortals' homeworld. They obviously did not know that it was feelings, essentially. Which does lead me to wonder now, does this mean that, perchance, this means that the Immortals will start to become more human over time, since, again, as far as we know, stuff was still leaking over, and if Gongora and Seth are still afflicted with the virus, what's to say it won't become a super spreader over there?
Mostly because it seems that, after at least there's an implication, after closing the mid-tower of mirrors between the two worlds, it seems as at the very least, the connection has been severed, as a result, the feelings cannot leak into that.
It does kind of provide something of, like, some poetic irony, though. Like, Gongora was the one who loved the feeling so much he wanted to stay in the world, yet for all his evil doing, he loses out on it, while the actual immortals, were just trying to do their job or live good lives, get just that, essentially. They get to keep their feelings while also staying in here. This also explains why any children they had weren't immortal, since, from what I can understand,
it's not
kind of
a
like
biological thing, but their bodies are basically construct that their consciousness is built by entering the world.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's kind of like Nier, wherein the bodies are kind of just cases for the souls, essentially. Like, obviously they can reproduce, but it'll just
There's
keep you
nothing
immortal.
genetically that cannot be inherited, unfortunately.
Yep.
I will say this, though, like, it does feel like pretty much almost all of my concerns with the story are addressed by this journal, which unfortunately means it does suck if you miss this journal.
It really recontextualizes almost everything. Like I said, including giving a bit more sympathy towards Gongora as a character, because it spends the entire game being a literal master sword in virulence that makes ooh faces all the time, But then you learn that if there's a possibility at the very least that he was just trying to do his job at the beginning, but was just affected more than the others by this thing.
Yeah.
The irony also being that what they thought was a virus may not have actually been that bad a thing to begin with.
It's just an alien concept, It's like trying to describe, a being that arrives on our planet, doesn't know what the color cyan is, trying to describing that. Sometimes we take a lot of things for granted, Jova, but, matter of perspective. But we're not done.
All right, so
Right.
that's basically it, everybody. You can check these for yourself.
Links in the description.
In the Lost Odyssey Wikia. All right, so like I've said, we have 2 DLC dreams to watch, so let's watch those. I want to remind everybody, because of the circumstances I've already explained previously in the playthrough, I could not record one of these dreams on my own. So, yeah, obviously the timing is not the same. Alright, so the first dream is called The Old Soldier's Will, but except when you start the dream, it's called The Old Soldier's Legacy, so... Somebody...
That's the same thing, Pedro.
Anyway, the point is, Kaim spent an entire summer by a fence towered over him, basically a prisoner of war camp, basically. So, however, it was a mistake because but the commander was a mercenary attached to the men's regiment. They were invading the enemy's main port when the miscalculated at the end, and he said, don't worry, he said to his men who were looked up. Whatever happens now, the ultimate victory will be ours. It's fine. Then they said this, but the officer completely misread the feelings of an enemy on the brink of defeat, having but Kaim knew because he's survived hundreds of battles, obviously, so he knows much better. You'd forget about any rosy pictures, he said. This could be worse than the battlefield. Yeah, exactly. His words proved all too accurate, because life in the prison of war camp was bitterly harsh. Makes sense. So the sick and injured were untreated and were not allowed to even rest, to collapse, and the job was to die, basically. Everyone with access to the camp, both the soldiers and even the citizens, looked upon the prisoners with hatred in their eyes. Some guards, again, kind of similar to what happened with the prison in that previous dream we saw, right? Uncertainty, fear, hatred, and revenge. There's a Yoda joke in here somewhere, but also a place shrouded in uncertainty and fear. Blah blah blah. People hate the prisoners. The horror and war lay not only in the mutual killings of enemies clashing in the battlefield, but even more so in places such as this that were far from the front lines. Kaim knew this, of course. A month passed, and the platoon entered the prison of war camp. The enemy troops were fully exhausted. The fall of the capital was set to be imminent. In spite of that, though, life in the camp was worse than ever. Why? Because the tasks assigned to the prisoners were even crueler than before. Because we hate prisoners! The military guards bullied the prisoners. Jesus Christ, dudes. Wounding them and mistreating them with fatal consequences. All kinds of civilians did their part too. Hurling human waste over the fence into the camp. Jesus. Fuck.
Rains it pours.
So all the young men of the enemy country were being sent into battle, where most of them were being killed, where towns had been burned down and transformed into rubble, the soldiers assigned to guard duty, and then they continued to be victors where the prisoners of war were concerned. Basically. The moans of the prisoners of war could be heard throughout the camp. When is this war going to end? The war doesn't have to end. Just let them get us out of here. Won't we be abandoned by fatherland? Kaim kept offering the same advice to them again and again. Be patient. Don't give hope, said Kaim.
Don't give up hope, yeah.
Just
Don't give hope.
Kaim knew everything was there to know about war, so he realized what was happening now. The Farland Supreme Commanders were trying to bring down the capital first, and then leaving the Fallen this military port city for later. So the prisoners of war have in fact been abandoned. Yeah, for the sake of a great victory, we cannot let ourselves be concerned about a small setback, said the commander. Basically.
I wonder what this story is paralleling.
I wonder. One prisoner of war and another made plans to escape, and for one of those, there was an informant who exposed his plan to the guards. Both times the prisoner had the same thing in mind, to save himself alone. No one could be trusted. Even some informants who made up phony escape stories about perfectly innocent men just to put themselves in a little better position with the guards. So basically everybody's everybody's a shitty person. The fence is not the only thing surrounding the prisoners of war. It was just their bodies, their minds that had been taken captive. In addition to that, they died from illness. And of course, Kaim kept saying, "Be patient, don't give up hope," said Kaim. After the men had been prisoners of war for 2 months, a new guard took charge of Kaim's barrack. In place of the young warrior who had been guarding them came an old soldier. His name was Jemmy. When he introduced himself to the men, he remarked with a smile, "Things must be getting pretty desperate if they're calling up an old goat like me." The young guard had been sent to the front lines. This probably meant that the battle for the capital had entered its final phase. "I tell you, this war is almost over. In another month, the young fellows will be on the other side of the fence." So Jamie needed no prompting from the prisoners of war, and his voice contained none of the hate-filled agitation for the young guards. You fellas have to hang in there a little longer. Do not give up hope." Everybody keeps telling us this, but whatever. "We may be in different positions, but deep down we're the same. You men are unarmed prisoners, and will be under your control as soon as you come to occupy the country." So he twisted his wrinkled face into a big grin and laughed aloud. Ha 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 ha. Before they knew it, they were smiling too. So basically, he was the first person to cheer up the prisoners. Jamie's kindness was not limited to words. Of course, the changing a single guard was not enough to substantially improve the prisoners' treatment, obviously. "Sorry for working you so hard, but there aren't any young men left in this town to do the muscle work. We're not making you do these jobs to punish or discipline you, but because the town needs your help with these construction projects. I'm sorry we can give you anything decent to eat." Jamie would try to order somewhat easier jobs for prisoners who had taken ill, and he would sneak them extra food. This is the kind of guard he was. They even started calling him Uncle Jamie. "We'd better warn the guards were like you, Uncle Jamie," said one prisoner. "I'll tell you what, Uncle Jamie," said another prisoner. "If I had known that there were people like you in this country, I never would have volunteered. I'm not forgetting my place as a prisoner of war, but let me shake your hand once." So Jamie allowed himself the faintest of smiles for this. "You know something, Kaim," Jamie said, sitting down beside Kaim during a break in a heavy lifting. It was a clear, beautiful day, but the sunlight pouring down on them had lost its midsummer glare. "I'd say you're a little different from these younger prisoners." And Kaim's like, "Am I?" "I know that because you're a veteran and you've done a lot of wars." Of course, obviously. So Jamie seemed to know that Kaim's response, what his remark would be. "Why haven't you escaped? It would be easy for a man like you to escape." And Kaim's like, "You give me too much credit." So Kaim gave him another strange smile, saying nothing. Jamie was right. If he decided to escape on his own, it would be easy for him to climb over the fence. If, however, he managed to gain his freedom, the prisoners would be left behind. So obviously he's not going to do that. Men like that could only be a drag on his fight to freedom, basically. "You're a kind-hearted fellow, aren't you, Kaim?" said Jamie. "Yeah, and you're a smart one." "What do you mean by that?" "I'm smart. Any soldier with as much experience as you has already seen the handwriting on the wall. The war is over. Another 3 days, maybe a week." "Yes, and?" "Well, it'll be a little longer. All I have to do is hold on a little longer. You must know what as well as I do, so you're probably not even thinking of making the escape." So when Kaim nodded, Jamie smiled and said, "That's fine. I'm just as fed up as you are with all the pointless fighting and hatred." He looked up at the autumn sky, his profile marked by deep wrinkles. "Let me tell you something, Kaim. All right, our country doesn't have the strength to make it through another hard winter. I knew when summer was still here." "Oh, I see," said Kaim. "I just wish we had given up sooner. Then there wouldn't have been so many young men killed in battle." Jamie released a deep sigh and nodded. "Oh, when this war is over, we're going to have to do whatever your country tells us." Kaim could not assure him that would never happen. As a mercenary, he would just go off seeking new employment when this war ended. So yeah, it's not like Kaim has any allegiance to any of these two countries. "I think you'll know what I mean, Kaim, when I say you can be as cruel as you like to us old folks in the fighting ends. But please, I'm begging you, be decent to the young men and the women and the children. Don't do anything to them that will make them hate your country."
"I slaughter them like animals."
It happened at that very moment. The violent ringing of a bell began to echo through the camp. "Oh well, gotta go," Jamie said. "Don't bother going to work right away. The other fellows, everybody can make a little break." He took a few steps before turning to Kaim with a smile. "You know, if we were enemies..." "Oh well.
We could be friends, classic."
Yeah. The sun we overheard when Jamie left. We did not come back even after I began sinking in the west. The next time when someone came into the enclosure was to the cheaters of the prisoners of war. "You're going to be alright, man. The war is over." Jamie's country has agreed to a total surrender, basically. "Gotta move on. Hurry up! The soldiers who, until a short time ago, had ruled the camp were herded into the enclosure with whips and under the threat of drawn swords. The prisoners of war, until only moments ago had been under their rule, now lined up to stare at their former guards. And before anyone knew it, the guards were under... Yeah. Jamie was among them. He stared at Kaim, blood gushing from his forehead, and his eyes showed no hatred or resentment. Kaim shouted to the men surrounding these prisoners, "Stop it! They've surrendered! Leave them alone!" said Kaim. But liberated from the fear of death and humiliation, his young comrades wouldn't do it. "Can't you see who this is? It's Uncle Jemmy! Stop it!" One of the soldiers gave him a contemptuous snort, but spit out the words. "The old bastard was just sucking up to us when our side won." "What?" "Another soldier, the young man, had asked us to shake Jemmy's hand that day," shouted. So basically, the prisoners are a bunch of ungrateful assholes. The commander of the troops had got up to the rescue and just grinned and said, Good, get out of your system," said Jemmy. "Kill them all and raise some victory cries while they're at it. Think of the humiliation you endured as prisoners. Now kill them all!"
Kill them all like civilized gentlemen.
Wait, I know. Don't waste your time on him, man. Warriors of our beloved fatherland, kill these soldiers first, and then we can attack the town. Set fires. Take the women. We won this war. This town, this country, everything belongs to us now. The commander laughed aloud, basically. But it was too late. The soldiers were already slashing wildly at the former guards, who had no means to defend themselves. Standing amid the hellish scene of human butchery, Kaim saw it happen. The old soldier, who had been kind because he knew all too well the link between war and hatred, fell to the ground without uttering a word. A hateful blade thrust into his back. Jesus. Kaim made a break for the camp gate. He ran all he could. Why did people have to hate each other so? Why did people have to fight each other so? And why was it impossible for people to stop fighting and stop hating? He did not know the answers to these questions. Sadly and frustrated, Kaim ran at full speed through the rubble of the town.
I think this may be the first time we've seen Kaim just so terrified that he only can run.
So 100 years passed by.
Years later.
Yeah, 100
Let's
years
see
later.
how the tables may or may not have turned.
Well, it's gone nice at least.
This is it, Kaim, the commander says with a smile. And I'm enormously grateful for the management job you've done. You can never win war when the war is over. The last great offensive is about to begin. This should bring the war to a close. It has taken 100 years. After all these long years as a vassal state, the country has lost the war the year Kaim was a prisoner and has raised its banner against the ruling power under which it endured. The defeated country has spent 100 years nurturing its hatred for the ruling power, passing the hatred down from child to grandchild, of course. The only things that it has handed down from parent to child to grandchild are the scorn and contempt for the inferior country. Ha. This war ends with almost disappointing ease. The results are the exact opposite of 100 years earlier. So basically the cycle of war. Alright, Kaim, name your reward. And Kaim answers softly, I don't need a thing. But why not? It's true that you're a mercenary, but you far outdid the regular troops. If that's how you really feel, I'd like you to promise me one thing, says Kaim. What's that?
To shut up.
Spare them.
Don't make your enemy hate you, says Kaim. What are you talking about? I'm talking about treating the people of the defeated country with kindness and respect. Shocked expression is that, aren't you as the salted-hearted one, Kaim? Treating people with respect. Enough, says the commander. Dismissed. Kaim himself has no hope that Jemmy's legacy will be fulfilled. A 100-year journey has taken since that fateful day. And yet, back at his post, Kaim grips his sword and holds his breath. It will change someday. They will see someday. I want to believe that, says Kaim. Unless I believe it, I can't go on with my endless journey. You know what I mean, don't you, Uncle Jemmy? Eyes closed, he can see Jemmy's face smiling sadly. The order goes out to the entire assembled force. Charge! Within the rising clouds of dust, Kaim grips his sword and starts to run.
Well, shit. Here we go again.
Here we go again.
Man, this might have been the most human I've seen Kaim act in any of these streams. Holy cow.
Alright, and here's Sami the storyteller. This stream is exclusive to people who pre-ordered the game, and if you haven't pre-ordered the game back in 2008, you're fucked, shithead.
Wow. We're going full archaeologist with this one.
Sami the storyteller.
And if the remaining part is all dedicated to this, we've got a meaty one.
Sami was an outstanding storyteller, one of the best official reciters of the national history there have ever been, and he was far away the most popular of the storytellers in the country's army. Sami was not a soldier himself, he was just basically a storyteller, basically. Whenever a battle ended and Sami came out of town, he was filled with countless stories of soldiers who had performed heroic deeds. Stories of soldiers who had saved their bodies. Stories of soldiers who had used their bodies as shields. Stories of daring soldiers who had broken into the enemy camp single-handedly. So basically Kaim, what you're saying, probably.
So, tales of daring, do, bad, and good luck tales. Woohoo!
Basically. It was Sami's job as a storyteller to depict events on the battlefield for the people of the town. That year, Kaim was always by his side. It was Kaim's mission as a particularly capable mercenary to accompany Sami into the front and basically being his escort.
Bodyguard and all that.
Sami liked Kaim from the moment they teamed up. Not only did they appear to be about the same age, but with the eye of an outstanding storyteller, Sami was able to perceive the long past. The too long past that this quiet warrior carried with him. Sami said, I could tell the minute I saw you that you had more to experience than any of these people. Am I right? The only difference between you and me is that you can't put yours into words as well as I can, right? Sami spoke in the professional reciter's ringing tones. Come on, Kaim, tell me something. I don't care if it's a scrap of a scrap. Just give me a hint of something that you've seen on the battlefield. This was probably true, Kaim thought. If Kaim were to put himself in Sami's hands, his never-ending life would surely be extolled in the form of a never-ending narrative poem. This was precisely why Kaim merely shook his head in silence. Even Peter Jackson would blush at how long this would of a movie this would be. The townspeople knew nothing of the actual battlefield, how soldiers fought in the front, how they killed their enemies, blah blah blah. Yeah, the people who could only imagine these things upon hearing them celebrated in Sami's stories. Conversely, the soldiers fighting on the front had no way of knowing how their stories were being told in the town. The only ones that knew both sides were Sami himself and his bodyguard Kaim, who clung to him like a shadow. As soon as he returned from the battlefield to the town, without even pausing to catch his breath, Sami would head directly to the square in the front of the castle gate. People were waiting for him. They were hungering for his stories. They wanted to know how their husbands and sons and fathers and lovers and friends had fought and died on the battlefield. For these people, Sami...
There you go.
Yeah, for these people, Sami would mount the stage in the square and recount... So basically, he literally got on stage and just told stories. Sami's stories of the battlefield, however, were by no means composed of unadorned fact. He beautified many parts. He cleverly concealed elements that could be embarrassing to the army, of course. If a soldier happened to do something that was relatively helpful to his unit, if Sami's hands would be transformed into an amazing military exploit. But that was just the normal level of exaggeration he introduced into his stories. So basically, he's literally the first guy to beautify facts in real-life facts, basically.
Interesting.
In other words, Sami's stories were almost all lies. It could be said that he was deceiving the people, but that was the mission of the storyteller. In the square stood a number of soldiers carrying swords. If Sami ever said anything that ran counter to the interests of the military, he would be arrested, obviously, and imprisoned him for whatever remained of his life. It's kind of like how for a long time in Germany after World War II, you weren't allowed to talk about the Nazi regime. Kaim knew well enough that Sami's duty as a national reciter was to whip up the people's fighting spirit. While accomplishing that, his stories will also serve to comfort those who had lost their friends, obviously. People would often ask Sami, what was it like when my son died? Or how was my boyfriend on the battlefield? How about my father? Sami would ask the soldier's name, answer, then yet, oh yes, I remember him well. Totally. And speak moving to the death of the nameless soldier of whom he had no recollection, whatever. Before long, here and there, the throng crammed into every corner of the square, basically. So basically everybody loved him constantly. He's kind of like John Edward, in a way. What's wrong with that? Sami said in affirmation. The families of the soldiers killed in action have grieved enough already from hearing the news. So basically his idea is that I'm going to beautify the truth a bit so that people don't have to suffer. I'm absolutely committed to this as a storyteller. That's basically it. He wants to tell them beautiful lies instead of the ugly truths, basically. This was the kind of man that Sami was, and this is why Kaim continued to protect him on the battlefield. Beyond his bodyguard duties, he would also go for a drink with him whenever Sami suggested it. But then there were those times when Sami started pestering him for stories. Come on, Kaim, tell me a story. Share those stories with me. No matter how much Sami begged, Kaim kept his mouth shut. It's not as if I would use them for story material. If you don't want me to tell anybody, I won't, I swear. I have to know. Call it part of my nature as a storyteller. Kaim said nothing. You know, Kaim, you look young, but you're actually 500 or 600 years old, aren't you? I bet you got more stories packed in there than I can count.
Okay, do you just have a crystal ball for this stuff? Jesus.
Intuition.
Sami headed out once again to the front. This time was for a major battle. Sami and Kaim were sharing a drink in their barrack right before a major confrontation when a young soldier, just a boy, paid them a visit. It's me, Uncle Sami, Aaron, the tailor's son. So Sami instantly broke into a warm, nostalgic smile. Aaron is afraid is from my hometown, he explained. I've known him since he was an infant. He's like a brother to me. Turning back to Aaron, Sami asked, how's your mother? She's well, thanks. You should hear her boasting about you, though, Uncle Sami. She tells everybody that she's so amazed by that mischievous little Sami turned out to be one of the most popular figures in the whole country. I owe her a lot, Aaron. She told me so many stories when I was a kid. That's how I became a storyteller. Really? It's true. She made me what I am today. So she was also a big liar, maybe? Sami said this with a big smile, which suddenly gave way to a stern expression. But tell me, Aaron, what are you doing here? I enlisted. I'm in the army now, he said, puffing out his chest. That's what everybody does when they hear your stories. You heard me telling stories? Sure. I had to come into town for something, and I saw the big crowd in the square. I looked to what it was all about, and it was you. I stayed and heard every last story. I couldn't stop crying at the end. So I went to the castle and volunteered. I suddenly felt the courage to fight for the fatherland. Aaron had not been the only one, apparently. The young men in the square had enlisted in mass. No wonder you're so popular. The man in the enlistment office was saying the number of volunteers jumps every time you perform. Aaron innocently... Yeah.
Boy.
Aaron... You're the only son in your family, aren't you? Sure, but that doesn't matter. Don't you know this is the very front line? Oh, of course I know that much. So what did your mother say? Well, she tried to stop me, of course, but so what? It was my decision. And besides, it was you, Uncle Sami, who taught me that fighting to protect the fatherland is more important than anything you can do for your parents. Jesus.
Imagine your words having consequences.
No fucking shit. Anyway, better get to my post. Bye. His conversation with Aaron having been cut short, Sami sat up straight and gulped down his cup of liquor. Kaim said nothing as he refilled Sami's empty cup. You know, Kaim, starting tomorrow, you don't have to protect me anymore. And
Is that so?
And Kaim's like, what are you talking about? I want you to protect Aaron instead of me. He gulped down another cup of liquor in a single breath. Kaim refilled it again without comment. I can't let him die. His mother really did do a lot for me from the times I was a little kid. Sami pounded his fist against the wall. Stupid, 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 he moaned.
All it took was one kid he actually cared about, and now he realizes that's one hell of an epiphany.
I don't think it's just for Aaron. I think it's like the entire realization that this entire group of young people are doing it. I mean, yeah, Aaron is the catalyst, but I'm pretty sure it's for all of them, not just Aaron.
Fair enough.
I told you, Kaim, forget about me. Protect Aaron. He's the one you should be guarding. I can't do that, says Kaim. Of course you can. You're the only one who can keep him alive. If I move away from here, I can't be sure of keeping you alive. I told you it doesn't matter about me. I've been ordered to keep you alive. It's my job, says Kaim. No, I told you, guard Aaron. Sami stood there shouting when an enemy soldier charged from the side swinging his sword. So Kaim swept the sword aside and stabbed the soldier in the belly. It was a close call. If anyone other than Kaim had been assigned to guard duty, yeah, probably. So Kaim says that he can't let him die. Is your duty that important to you? Why are you looking for a reward? Sami taunted Kaim. And then another enemy soldier charged at him. Neither, Kaim replied as he once again takes on this soldier. So then why? Why are you protecting me? Because there's something left for you to do, says Kaim. Something only you can do.
Time to write some non-fiction for a change.
Oh, don't be stupid, Kaim. And then someone once again, another soldier. Something only I can do? What? Tell another bunch of lies? Make up more stories about phony heroes? Excite more little kids like Aaron to enlist? No. Kaim shot back, shielding Sami again. That's not your real duty, says Kaim. What are you talking about? Not the duty the army assigned you. Your duty as a human being. Okay, now you're talking nonsense. No, I'm telling you, says Kaim. It's something only you can do.
You have the power of the press in a sense.
Once again, Kaim continues to kill people that are trying to kill Sami. Eventually, the enemy attack ended. Kaim grabbed Sami's hand and started running. They rushed toward the position of Aaron's unit. Kaim had no intention of standing by and allowing the underage soldier to be killed, but abandoning Sami was out of the question. But he was too late. Aaron was lying on the ground, drenched in blood, moaning in pain, weeping. His guts had been gouged out. He was done for.
And he's still alive.
Barely
Ouch.
conscious, Aaron caught sight of Sami and managed the faintest of smiles. Uncle Sami, I couldn't do anything to save the country. I'm sorry. Sami, in tears, shook his head. I messed up. I couldn't even kill one enemy soldier, said Aaron. And now look at me. Sami tried to speak through quivering lips, but his words were drowned out by his own sobbing. I never knew how scary it is to fight. How much it hurts to die. Aaron vomited blood. Convulsions racked his entire body. His eyes had lost their focus, and his breathing came only in snatches. Mama! Mama, it hurts so much. My stomach hurts, Mama. Bloody tears poured from his empty eyes. Mama. That was
like the end of Haze.
That was the last word that Aaron spoke. Sami came back to town a few days later. The square was already filled with people anxiously waiting to hear his eyes stories. There were more people dressed in mourning than usual. Evidence of the ferocity of the recent battle, of course.
I haven't got any bloody stories. Piss off.
Sami took a long, deep breath before entering the square. You know, Kaim, what is it? You said those strange things to me the other day, that I had a real duty to perform. That's my duty as a human being and only I can do it. Yes, I remember. If today I do a good job at performing what you call my real duty, will you tell me those stories of yours? So Sami had still wanted to death. Then lowering his voice, almost a whisper, Kaim said, Tell me, Kaim, how many... Sami said, how many men are standing guard in the square today? Kaim did a quick survey and reported there were 5 guards. Well, but can get away from all of them, I suppose. When he heard this, Kaim realized that Sami's vague idea of what he was talking about was right on the mark. I'm sure I can get you out of here, Sami. Forget it, Sami answered with a grave expression. I don't want to get you in trouble. You know what they'll do if they catch you. Sure, I'm ready for that.
But he considers his
without a doubt, Sami understood what his real duty was. He not only understood, but he intended to carry it out in exchange for his life as a storyteller. You know, Sami, you may be the one person who can stop this war. Kaim thrust out his right hand, and Sami grasped it shyly. It took me too long to realize it. Not really, Kaim said. You think there's still time? I do. Oh, I'm glad to hear that, Sami said with a smile, and releasing Kaim's hand, he strode into the square. Amid cheers and applause, he made his way to the stage. He never looked back at Kaim. When Sami mounted the stage, a woman dressed in mourning called out to him. Sami, tell me more what it was like when my sweet little Aaron died. I'm sure he gave his life proudly. Tell me everything. Eyes red and swollen from crying, she stared up to Sami, but all but clinging to him. Sami took heed of the look in her eyes. Without a hint of or smile, he gave her a curt nod. And then he began to tell the story in a soft and gentle voice. Aaron was in tears as he died. He was calling for you, his mother, and crying out in pain. His guts were hanging out from his body, it was smeared with blood, and he vomited blood at the end. A stir went through the crowded square. Not wanting to believe what she had just heard, Aaron's mother covered her ears. Sami did not let this stop him. Aaron wasn't the only one. They're all like that. They're all in pain when they die. Some of them die after the pain begins, and for others it's not so easy. But then they get trampled and rained on and baked into the sun. The stir in the crowd changed to angry shouts. The guards on duty turned pale. I have been to dozens of battlefields, and I've seen more deaths than I can count. I have learned one thing from it, and I'll tell you honestly what it is. There are no beautiful deaths in war. It's true for our enemies that it's true for us. Everybody's afraid to die. They miss their towns so badly. And then everybody's like, no, stop! Are you mad? Nobody really wants to kill another person. They just have to do it because they've been ordered to. That's what war is. If you hesitate to kill the enemy, he kills you first. I'm telling you, that's what war is. There's nothing beautiful about it. The shouts of... And everybody started shouting, traitor, arrest him, blah, blah, blah. Kaim was determined to do this much for Sami, whether the storyteller liked it or not. So basically, Kaim circulated for the audience, knocking everybody out. Of course, there was the limit to how much extra time you could buy for Sami.
You've all been fooled.
Listen, everybody, why do you think I've been making the rounds of the battlefields? It was a terrible mistake on my part, what I've seen out here. My story's about what I have seen out there. I should have used to bring a halt to this stupid war. Listen to me, everyone. Let's end this war. Let's end all war. Don't you see how crazy this is? Soldiers outside the square came charging in when they heard the commotion. Let's stop having wars. Let us lend his or her own power and effort to bring back the peace. A soldier leaped into the stage and smashed into Sami with his massive shield. Sprawling on the stage, blood gushing from his head, Sami gave a deeply satisfied smile. Cut my tongue out of a hot poker, if you dare. So the soldier kicked him in the stomach until he vomited blood, but still went on. It's wrong for people to kill people. It's wrong for people to be killed by people. The nation has no right to make murderers out of us. The soldiers surrounded the stage. Behind the wall of the soldiers, Sammy was pinned to the floor, his mouth pried open and his tongue cut out with a red-hot, glowing poker. Even so, he kept his appeal. No longer capable of producing words, he continued his desperate appeal with groans.
You're under arrest for trying to put us out of work.
Before long, the groans took the form of a melody, a song so beautiful and sorrowful, so frail and yet powerful, that it was unforgettable after a single hearing. The soldiers pounded Sammy. "Shut up, traitor! Take that!" Even so, the song did not end. Though it had no lyrics, it took on words as it reverberated inside each listener. No more. No more. No more war. Shut him up! Kill him if you have to! In response to his superior's order, a young soldier drew his sword. Even after Sammy had been stabbed in the chest and had taken his last breath, the song did not end. The crowd filling the square went on singing. Everyone was crying and singing as they threw stones at the soldiers. According to the history books, this was the beginning of the revolution. Many years passed by. There was no one left in the country who knew the living Sami. Except for Kaim, of course. Many more years passed by. But by then, only the scholars of history knew that there was only the storyteller named Sami who primed the pump of the revolution so long ago. Now Kaim is here. On his first visit to this country after several hundred years, on a back alley in a far corner of the city, he hears a familiar melody. A little girl is humming to herself as she bosses the ball. Yes, without a doubt, it's the song that Sami was singing after the soldiers cut off his tongue. Still bossing her ball, so I'm kind of asked, what are you singing? Oh, I'm singing, it's called Give Us Peace. Oh, do you know who made it? Says Kaim. Uh-huh, she says in all innocence. But everybody sings it. So she doesn't know who made it, but she says everybody sings it. Kaim gives her a gentle smile and says, "It's a nice song, don't you think?" The little girl catches the ball in both her hands, hugging it, says with a beaming smile, "Yes, I just love it." Kaim pats her on the head and begins to walk away. Before he realizes it, he is humming "Give Us Peace." When it finally dawns on him what he is doing, he thinks, humming? That's not like me at all. His grim smile is accompanied by a warm glow in the chest. The end.
You know, I have to wonder, did Kaim keep a journal so he could keep track of all these different places he came to?
Remember, Jova, these are his memories of things that, occasionally pop up back, as you
No. I'm specifically asking, like, while this stuff was going on, do you think he kept a journal to remind himself, okay, I need to come back to this village in 100 years, I need to come back to this pass in 10 years, oh, there's also this guy that I sunk medicine to, so I need to get back to him in 50 years, and, oh, right, there's the anniversary of this forest thing, too. Like, I'm just wondering, how did he keep track of, like, when he needed to go back?
Jova, he's just that good.
Okay, to give a more plausible explanation, maybe among his travels he basically went full circle and just casually wandered into this town again after all these years.
Sometimes he's actually stated, in the actual, dreams that he casually just returns, and he didn't realize that until he went there.
One of the exceptions being the shoemaker, since he always liked...
Obviously.
All right, everybody, and that's it. We are done with Lost Odyssey. Dwebs, final thoughts, please.
Okay. I did like it overall. Well, mainly more the stories as opposed to the main story. But the main story wasn't bad. It's just we got this other stuff that helps fill in the blanks of the 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
I like the music. I mean, this was post Final Fantasy IX. From what I've heard, this is one of Matsu's better tracks better scores post that time.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently this is a solo effort, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. For solo efforts, again, because whereabouts it was at the stage, it's a pretty good effort.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did think the ending was a bit weird. Like, okay, put it this way. It'd be like if at the end of Lost Future, like it just suddenly decided with no foreshadowing, right? I'm gonna save the day. Ah!
I will say this, like, I feel like the ending resonates better if you've read Gongora's journal. It's not the best that you can miss out on that journal. Like, I feel like, if I had known about I knew about the journal entries, but, like, if I had read the journal entries before the ending, then at least, the sacrifice would have made more sense in how it resonates, essentially.
It looks pretty good for an Xbox. Well, okay, I know we're playing the enhanced version, but even so, for a 360 game, it does look pretty good. There's not much in the way of bloom. It seemed to plague a lot of games from that era.
Mm-hmm.
The voice acting was pretty solid, and hey, especially from Michael McGahanahan.
Jensen Knuckles.
Yeah.
Jensen Knuckles. So I mean, hey, he can act.
Did he do anything after? Sorry.
Unlike what the hell happened with Sonic Adventure 1.
Well, with Sonic Adventure 1, it was just
fine for the most part. I mean, obviously you have stuff like the "oh no," but other than that, I recall him being fine.
With Sonic Adventure 1, like everything was stacked up against all the actors, so it's not really fair to take it on them because of that.
Like, that's the thing, though. There were better acting performances in that game, and they all have the same voice direction.
I guess.
Okay, let's be fair, Dwibs. John St. John has gone on record to say that they specifically used what he felt were his worst takes for Big the Cat. Like, so for all we know, he could have given some great takes as Knuckles. They just chose the not so great ones because maybe Japanese actors may not have the same sensibilities that, English-speaking actors do for tone or what resonates the best.
Yeah, and then there's those times lately when they cross over into the other language.
Anyway, to answer your question, go on.
Go on.
To answer your question, Jovan, no, like we mentioned in some of the early parts, Michael McGahern, only did a small short called Tourette Restaurant 1 year after this game, and ever since he hasn't done anything.
That's a shame. To add to your point, Dwibs, it's even more impressive his performance when you think about how much of it was improvised by him.
Which is interesting to me because normally when it comes to these kind of games, the amount of improvisation you're allowed to do is near non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, it's you stick to the script, or else we'll have the localization nut jobs on our asses.
Well, remember the English script is the default one.
Yeah.
Okay, could you imagine if back then they were around and then you had to tell them, guys, the English version came first?
Like, it makes sense. He was making this for Microsoft, of all people. Sure, they were trying to reach out to the Japanese market, but make no mistake, if he was going to make something for Microsoft, chances were the English script would take priority first.
That doesn't... In that case, what the hell happened with Blue Dragon then? Jeez. Because the voice acting in that game is... Anyway, go on, this.
So it'll be interesting to see. I take it we're going to be doing Last Story at some point.
Eventually, when I feel like doing that one, yes.
Yeah, and that game has British voice acting.
Yep.
So
Maria Darling is in it, in fact.
Again, it was part of the Operation Rainfall program, meaning that it was, first imported in Europe before America.
It was localized by Nintendo of Europe, the same people who were localizing Lightning games at the time.
And Xenoblade Chronicles, again, part of that same package.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, Lips?
Yeah, not much really. Okay, I will say, at the start, Janssen's shtick actually wasn't really all that funny to me. But it got better as the game went on.
All right.
Yeah, in case you guys didn't know. Because I don't recall ever voicing any
No,
opinion.
not really.
Well, that's also because, as you pointed out, it's something there just to establish at the beginning that he's a bit of a womanizer. But unlike with Brock in the Pokemon anime, they really stop before it gets very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Ironically, you might even forget he had those 3 girls trailing after him until the wedding, where they show up to, I guess, lament their loss of him.
The idea with Jensen is that he's a good person at heart who's a bit misguided in the way he's acting. That's why he has that moment at the ending when he's about to die where he says, you made me want to become an honorable man, basically. All right. Anything else?
No, not really. Overall, I really enjoyed my experience of this game.
Okay. All right. Jova.
Now, one I'm going to say may be a bit of a hot take, but when it comes to games that Sakaguchi made for Microsoft, I'm going to say that I truly believe that this was a better game than Blue Dragon.
Wow, Jova, that is an amazingly, incredibly burning take. You're going to burn steel with that one.
I know. I'm sorry, Blue Dragon fans. I truly am, but this game just spoke to me.
See, the thing is, Jova, even people who like Blue Dragon still admit The Lost Odyssey is much better anyway. That's the thing. I have never heard anybody try to argue that Blue Dragon is better than Lost Odyssey.
I guess kudos to Blue Dragon fans for being humble in that regard.
Most Blue Dragon fans who like it still admit that it has shortcomings. I have never heard anyone try to, Blue Dragon is like an underrated masterpiece. I've never seen anyone try to say that. Like,
even I haven't seen that.
To give you an idea, Joe, but there's, as Taylor mentioned, there's still Lost Odyssey essays on YouTube coming up. People talking about how it's an unappreciated gem and shit like that. You don't see that for Blue Dragon whatsoever. Nobody talks about Blue Dragon, and for good reason, let's face it.
Give it time. Someone eventually will do it.
I will say, if it hasn't come to it this... Oh, okay. There probably is some fanatic out there, but, like, not enough to a point where it's noticeable. Like, heck, even on stuff praising the music, like with the bossing, I see people admit, yeah, I love the bossing, but it still is pretty silly and stupid. But, okay. Keeping this on Lost Odyssey, yes. Obviously, I think that this is the better Sakaguchi game for the Xbox, essentially. That being said, I do think it's good. In fact, I'd argue it's very good, but I feel like it's just that. Like, I don't think it's particularly amazing. Now, again, I don't mean that as a slight against the game, but I can see it being a case where it's really good, but I don't feel like this game alone could have sold people on an Xbox 360. Again, unless they're really into Sakaguchi, in which case, yes. Like, if you prefer Sakaguchi-driven Final Fantasy games, this probably might convince you to get a 360, but again, it's not like an amazing journey like, say, Final Fantasy 7 or 9 that I feel would absolutely drive people there in droves, like, to the point where people even outside the genre would know about that sort of game. And again, I just want to point out, that is not inherently a bad thing. Sometimes we don't need something to be incredible or terrible. Sometimes we just need something there to be good, to help appreciate the really good or bad, essentially.
Sure. Although, can we both agree that the writing is genuinely incredible in the dreams, though?
Oh, yes. Like, so I will say this. The best writing is easily the dreams. Now, that being said, I overall enjoy the main narrative still more, but the dreams definitely are what I would argue to be the most top-tier writing here, or at the very least the most consistent in top-tier writing. That's not to say, again, that the main narrative is inconsistent in its quality either, but I'll admit, it definitely feels like it's best for first-time viewing, since upon a second viewing or thinking about stuff, I do realize some stuff feels a bit flawed here. Might as well start with Gongora, who is possibly my favorite thing about the game, but I will admit, the more I think about it, the more I do realize he's a great bombastic threat, but he ain't that deep. And again, let me state this for the record. I'm not somebody who needs my villains to always have a big theme or be some deep, misunderstood person who's actually not really a bad guy. No. I can appreciate that. No, my issue is that I feel like Gongora's motivations don't feel like they run as deep as the story wants you to feel like. That is until you read his journal. Yeah, okay, so a lot of my potential story critiques or worries were ultimately addressed by the journal, which is something that you can miss. I've said it before, and I will say it again. I have never really been a fan of bits where arguably crucial bits of the story are hidden in collectibles that you can very well miss. Now, okay, if you're going out of your way to not collect them, that's one thing, but it does feel like the journal thing is a bit out of the way, potentially, or... question, is it available the first time you go there, or is it something like you gotta backtrack?
When the game opens up.
When the game opens up, obviously, like you yourself said, if they had allowed you to read the journal right at the beginning, it would spoil basically the entire game. So obviously they're not going to let you do that, obviously.
Pretty much, essentially. So it's a bit of a two-pronged thing. That being said, once I do read the journal, yes, I see a lot more to it. I do wish that Gongora had a bit more presence in the story, though, since it does feel like we have a few chunks where the game almost kind of forgets about him, too. But I digress. Adding to another issue I have, I do feel like it was a missed opportunity that we didn't get to see what the Immortals' homeworld is like, or at least get something of a dream or flashback pertaining to what they were like beforehand. Again, this is technically also addressed by Gongora's journal, but it was such a missed opportunity to, not give Gongora himself a dream that explains the backstory in a neat fashion. Because we do play as him as well, so there would have been opportunities for that. Though between him and Sarah not getting their own dreams, you do wonder if maybe at some point development was running a bit thin, so they couldn't fit that in. Which, again, I still have my doubts on, because I feel like dreams shouldn't take that much programming. But whatever.
You have to remember also the fact that the dreams were written by an external writer, which was also a book writer. So, they probably just gave him a general idea and then said this writer would come up with a concept. So, it's an external part involved and, it comes from an actual book writing. So it's completely divorced from the actual game development.
Allow me. His name is Kiyoshi Shigematsu, and he's one of the best-selling authors in Japan. The major theme of his novels is about family. To make your jokes. So he is an incredibly beloved and respected author in Japan. Which is why Sakaguchi got him. Could you maybe bring some of that awesomeness to my game, please?
And remember about the quote from Toy Story 2?
You can't rush art.
Yeah.
That is true. So in that case, just to check, he did also do the story relevant ones too, right?
Yes, he did all of them. All the dreams are written by him. With Sakaguchi giving him some basic, like for example, let's say for example the Seth's dreams, right? Obviously Sakaguchi gave a basic outline. Okay, here's what Seth's backstory is, and I want you to basically flesh this out into a full-blown two-part dream, basically. So okay. Sakaguchi is coming up with the base ideas for some of these dreams, specifically the ones that are tied to the main narrative, like the one that tells Ming. Obviously, that one was also... But Shigematsu was the one writing the actual proper dialogue and the full-blown script of these dreams, basically.
Okay, in that case, then, I guess I can say, going over to a positive here, the dreams are not only top-tier writing, but I do have to appreciate the lengths they went to make sure that the writing feels consistent enough with that of the main story, in the sense that the characters who show up in those dreams still feel in line with how their characters are in the main game story. And given how it sounds like the writer for the dreams was heavily divorced from the overall process of the game story, I have to compliment the lengths they went to maintain good communications on that regard.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure Sakaguchi probably made whatever changes he could to the game itself to accommodate for whatever Shigematsu wrote, probably.
Like, there are maybe some dreams that I feel fall a bit flat, essentially. But, I will say this, like, they all pretty much carry over to having a good output, essentially. It actually might have been cool if we got a bit of an excerpt dream showcasing of the future, but maybe they didn't want to jump the shark in that regard. That being said, to cover the negatives again, I feel like the story can be a little uneven at times. Like, admittedly, sometimes it feels like we're going somewhere, other times it feels like we're wandering aimlessly. And, of course, special mention goes to, unfortunately, a lot of what happens with Gotsa, essentially, where we have that contrived as all hell split up, which I guess, to be fair, makes it so that all the party members will be able to survive what goes on in Gotsa, but still, kind of a little contrived that Kaim and Sarah would let the last links to their flipping daughter out of their sight like that. But...
Like Teo said, Sakaguchi really wanted to split the party up, but he couldn't come up with a good excuse at all.
But, again, some iffy bits here and there. Like, I do feel like the game gets off to a bit of an awkward start, too, with some of the bits here. And yeah, some of the scripting of battles can get a bit annoying. The sewer dungeon sucked. We've already been over that as well. There are some dungeons that do feel like they drag on a bit, essentially. A lot of this you can chalk up to some of the usual trappings of JRPGs or RPGs in general. But yeah, negatives out of the way, it seems like it's still an overall good and expansive journey. You have, in typical Sakaguchi fashion, a nice varied set of characters that you accumulate over time, essentially, with many different interactions and whatnot. I think, ironically, out of all of them, Jansen may actually have the best arc, essentially. Oh, don't get me wrong, the Immortals, they have their arcs and whatnot, but admittedly, the Immortals' arcs feel a bit like it's more a case of reclaiming their memories to regain the hopes that they had as opposed to growing as people. This is admittedly partially because we see a lot of their development retroactively via the dreams, essentially. So, like, for the Immortals, in some cases it feels like they've technically already had their developments, they just forgot. That is different for the mortal characters. Again, I'd argue most notably with Jansen, who goes from being kind of a pathetic comedic sidekick to arguably being the mortal who gets the most stuff done, essentially. And kudos on him for it, for managing to keep up, essentially. And, his relationship with Ming is well-developed and greatly nuanced.
And one of the big, I will argue one of the big reasons why Jensen works so well is because of Michael's incredible improvisation. He adds so much character to Jensen.
Which honestly also makes the bit where he stays on script weigh a lot, because you can tell, oh crap, Jensen's taking this seriously, we might actually be about to die.
I get the feeling it's like Teo said, it's one of those things where he was given, okay, here are the main key points you're supposed to hit in the script. Everything in between those key points, improvise according to what you think would be good for the scene and for the character. Basically.
Either that, or they gave him a straight copy of his lines. He memorized them and just decided which one to stick to and which one instead to improvise. Sometimes it happens like that.
I could go over each character individually, but I don't want to take too long. I'll just say this. I feel like they're all done well. Yeah, I do feel like it's a bit of a crock that we had to sacrifice Seth, since I argue we could have just killed Gongora while he was in the light and then broken the mirrors, but I guess they really wanted Gongora to suffer, which, yeah, again, does go back to my main issue with the ending. Even knowing the context, I feel like getting a peep at, like, what it truly is to be like that on the other side would have given more weight to Seth's sacrifice and whatnot, essentially, but again, at the end of the day, I do get why they chose Seth, since it feels like, her sacrifice would be the one that feels the least cruel, since any other immortal sacrificing would have felt immensely cruel, especially to their human compatriots in that regard. And Zed was probably the most emotionally mature of the mortals, so I could see him being the one who could probably, keep his composure the best in the long run. Years to be had, yes, but he can definitely bounce back from it, in a sense. So, yeah. The music's good. Actually, no, great. Nobuo Matsu was let loose with this thing. Holy cow. Definitely the highlight is Gongora's themes. Definitely.
His theme is just as unsubtle as the characters. Dun 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 dun.
Like, shoot, I know he only had like one or so track for some of the Fairy Fence Ref games, but man, I wonder why he didn't go as wild there. They probably wouldn't have said
Again, probably just a page.
To him, those games were probably just a paycheck. I honestly don't think his heart was into it, honestly.
Possible on physical level, remember, even before what happened with Fantasian, he actually had health problems, and that's the reason why he's stepping out of developing full game soundtrack instead doing small, one-off or, 1 or 2 beats or games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, covered the characters, the writing. To give Microsoft credit, it seems like they did give them a good budget for this game. It looks definitely great for the generation it came out on. There are some iffy bits here and there, but again, it's 7th gen, so I'll give it some leeway, essentially. Yeah, weirdly enough, though, I don't get what was going on with the sound mixing in the last few discs. That, was just a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, no. To sum it up, overall, Lost Odyssey, and again, I jokingly call it Last Odyssey because, come on. Lost Odyssey is the Final Fantasy game that Xbox fans may have wanted, essentially. Ergo, if you weren't where the Final Fantasy action was but were hungering for it, this would be perfect for you if you had an Xbox 360, because it really feels like a Final Fantasy game in name only. And not just that, but it feels... Sorry. A Final Fantasy game in everything but name. Which... And mind you, it's a good one. Now, if it were, traditionally available nowadays, I would recommend it, and hopefully it will become a lot more accessible. But hey, if you got a good enough emulator and you have legal means, give it a try. Because, it's Final Fantasy on the Xbox, which might be the best deal you're gonna get.
All right, Theo.
Yeah, all right. Let me start with the presentation, because I think it's one of the bigger parts of, the entire game. While it's perfectly fine on its own in a vacuum, this has the same problem of Blue Dragon. The overall desaturation and relying on, muted colors and, more of a browns, grays, and, even when it comes to stuff like blue and red to be more, desaturated properly, the lack of vibrant color makes arguably Final Fantasy 13 look, in terms of presentation better. Not necessarily for the art style, I'm talking just about the color distribution. And I did mention even on Redo that I'm not a fan even on that case either, because 13.2, despite having more vibrant colors, 13, regular 13, despite having vibrant colors, it seems to rely more on light shades of those colors, like cyan, a more pistachio green, or pink and magenta, instead of proper vibrant reds. So compared to other Final Fantasy, still a bit of a step down and reflective of that generation. So I think this is one of the biggest things that hampers this game, Lost Odyssey, down. This also is affected by all the characters' outfits. You may be excused to not even notice stuff like the flaming decals on Zed's pants, which are something that give personality to the character, but because of the overall desaturation, you don't really see it that much, And almost all of the characters seem to kind of sort of blend. The only ones that really stand out are, of course, Tolten because of golden armor, and a bit Jensen, but he's more humble type of attire, makes him almost look like a traditional Japanese monk. If you've seen stuff like Inuyasha, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Despite having that standing out, it's still not enough to to say, oh yeah, so definitely Japanese RPGs main character that I think of. Again, it's reflective of the time and the console this was released, but I think, and also partially inspired by the mangaka that did the art style, but I think it would have been would help. Same kind of goes for the not necessarily, well, technically yes, art style, because it's still like what I just said, follows the footsteps of this mangaka, but compare also to Blue Dragon, which is technically night and day because are two different mangakas at work. It still feels like this wants to be recapture properly the Xbox 360 audience, which was more used to the true grime and gritty of a more photorealistic art style back then, thanks to Aero and Gears, and as a result, these art style work perfect for them. But honestly, on the long run, despite the goofy facial expressions that work, better for when it comes to having comedic moments, I argue it's still hampered down. The first 13 is a bit better, despite also that trying to follow photorealism, because Square Enix still tries to blend in a bit more the manga, the proper anime style aspect, even if it has been diluted so much over the recent years. But again, when it comes to presentation, I argue these are mostly the most negative parts, because almost everything else actually works. The score is absolutely the best to me that Uematsu has done so far. Easily 10 out of 10 boss themes. Just for these alone.
You mean the entire soundtrack? Like put this over Final Fantasy 9 and 6?
Well, yeah. Again,
really? Wow.
Again, okay. Let me put it this way. I'm judging this in a two kind of vacuum thing. You have to remember, Final Fantasy to me has more of a nostalgic component to it, and I technically, on a quantity level, I technically more Final Fantasy, even taking just one single chapter, tracks saved on my MP3 list than for this game. But I can tell you that I have a bit more enjoyment out of these than that. Not that much. Again, keep in mind, however, this is to me just equally to compare stuff like to say which version of Clash of the Big Bridge is better. The bar is just that high that I don't really have to say that even if something is technically lesser than something, don't take it as automatically it being bad, please. Because it's still just a testament to how good the composer is. Again, the only major tracks that I will say that I particularly don't care about, Uematsu would be the ones from 8, because like I said, a lot of them are just very forgettable to me. But again, even so, I wouldn't really consider it that abysmal, and I still have quite the amount saved on my own. Again, my point is that because of the experimentation in this, I really genuinely enjoyed it. Like I said, it was also one of my favorite things from Blue Dragon, even beyond the memes of the boss theme. Like I said, over the years, I genuinely came to enjoy the final boss theme. The seal is broken as a result. But so at the very least, it helps. This helps greatly about the actual presentation. When it comes to the gameplay, it's technically fine, and like we and all of other people said, yes, this is basically the Final Fantasy where Square wasn't making at the time, because that's not even much of a context compared to 13. This gameplay here, trumps it all. Even if it's not as developed as I think it should be, lots of same type of weapon being used, a bit like in Xenogears. There are not many match-up skills. It's mostly magic focused, and way too many accessories and way too little slots to fill them in, for you to properly enjoy your characters. I really think it should have been rebalanced a bit, either tone down the accessories or put different type of, armor slots, or put more accessories, and maybe give you like a penalty for having a lot of them, like having a less of effect, maybe. I don't know. It gives me the vibe of, you have a lot of options, but it feels like you never do a correct type of choice unless you're applying to quote unquote the meta, which has to be something that happens in every single game. But again, on its own, the gameplay is perfectly fine. And again, if anything, again, it really makes me nostalgic about, the traditional, even the ATB system, even if this one instead is more properly turn-based. So at the very least, this is going for. You're eventually going to see Legend of Dragoon, which has a mechanic that is what inspired the QT-esque, mash the battle and when a circle arrives at the target when a character strikes. Because, like I said, the people who work on that game and Shadow Hearts to an extent also worked on this. So there's also that. So again, the presence also of the speed button for running is also a welcome addition because, like I said, that is basically the one features that helps replayability and in general, helps a lot of, gaming without having to compromise the challenge factor, The only other thing that should have been added, like I mentioned a couple of times, would be a slider for the random encounters, which is the more ideal outcome for those who want to choose either between grind and decide when it's enough without having to just have a, on and off switch about instantly killing everyone or, being invincible like in Doom. When it comes to the character variety, I just mentioned, but aside from the weapon type, again, it feels like Sakaguchi was very much more focused onto the magical side than the physical ones. Again, the major variety where we get is one of the two children, which basically beats the shit out of everything with his bare hands, and the Sed, which has a gun, but you get it relatively late in the game, which leads me to my next point, the pacing. This, like I said, really feels like it has the same component of final design on the journey that goes on, but basically lets you having your freedom way too late for you to properly enjoy it. It's almost at the very end of the game instead of being at the very least on the halfway point. Again, the part of the reason why Final Fantasy VII works just that much is because while not being, an immediate thing that you get, the Midgar section at the beginning does not take that long. It's just that right amount. And when you think you're basically done with that and you're basically going to be stuck in this city forever, the world literally opens up. And even if you follow a set path, it just, shifts, and it gives you an awe-inspiring kind of thing. While in this, instead, it feels like you're always on the path without really that much, movement to wriggle,
Would you say it annoys you because it feels like they can't decide between linear or open world? Like, if it just, stayed dedicated to one or the other, would that annoy you?
No, it's not about annoying, Jova, and it's more, I think, the fact that to me, it shows that the game still was rushed to some degree, and they were having confined. Again, Square's statement about not being able to make towns and shops was an hyperbole, but I can genuinely believe other companies, like in this case, transitioning towards the HD era from the SD era, genuinely had trouble replicating the amount of content that they had for the previous generations with the new library, especially working on much more complicated hardwares. This was the moment where games started to cost more and take more times to be made, which we are still seeing the effects to this very day. So again, I can understand what happened, when it comes to the development team, and also the fact that they were also developing Blue Dragon at the same time, technically. Which reminds me, I found a video in the meantime, one of those essays. It's not that long, around 45 minutes, so I'm gonna watch it after we're done with the parts. So I'll update what my thoughts will be on that specific thing in a comment under this one. So you can look forward to that to see, if this Clamps person, thinks it's the underrated gen like Pedro was mentioning, or is just a more, neutral based some of the comments that I skimmed through seems to be more nostalgic than anything, but doesn't seem to veer too much into the whole, underrated angle. Again, you'll be able to hear my thoughts, read my thoughts later in the comment. But anyway, let's get down to the characters and story. Specifically, start with the 1,000 journey. As the others mentioned, and as we mentioned during the run, it's easily one of the best parts of the game. It really feels like this should have been a book compendium, proper one. I really wish this was done. Not just, again, don't misunderstand me, not to the point of, making it just the dreaded Japanese exclusive novel, but to make it also having a book. That would have been a neat pre-order bonus, So
like a book that compiles all the dreams, you said?
Yes, similar to the Wizard's Companion in the first Kuni, Something that you can pick up and just, read all the dreams in a, proper paper format, which, to be fair, these days you can just do that on the internet. PDFs and the wiki are a thing, so it's not about accessibility, but, confidence of, what you actually hold in your hands. Proper an actual physical goodie to actually complement the game. Maybe have there some of the other extra stuff. The weird pre-order exclusive thing still baffles me because not many games actually did that. Eventually, all DLCs tend to be released properly. So this feels something like someone genuinely forgot about potentially. Who knows? But my point is that the 1,000 Years of Dream are the best part of the game. In terms of story, which can come potentially to a detriment because you genuinely feel a bit of the the dissonance between the writing of the game and the writing of the dreams. They are still the same characters, but you pass from something that is very descriptive and very emotional, telling you the gruesome things, to not necessarily to a bad, but a more simplistic depiction, of the same themes through the journey that this party is having. It's a bit weird to explain, but it almost feels like, hypothetically speaking, while playing Final Fantasy X, we did have something like these written stuff talking about the journey that Braska, Auron, and Jack had. And when you cut back to stuff like not even necessarily Tidus fucking around because that's a tonal problem potentially, but just on a matter of plot, having a more simplistic dialogue, even if the themes are present, like Waka being racist, for example.
I think I can help you. I think the word you're looking for is inconsistency, in the sense that the writing in the game itself is good. It's just that the writing in the dreams is so amazing that every time you go back to the game, it's always this like you're constantly jumping between amazing writing, just good writing, amazing writing, good writing, amazing writing, good writing, and it's just
It's like,
go on.
I think I get it. It's like, imagine, say, you went from like the writing in a visual novel, something that is geared specifically towards writing, to suddenly say, like, the writing in a platformer, essentially, like... And, I'm not saying platformers can never have deep stories, but what I'm saying is you don't go into a platformer expecting a story on the same tier as, say, something like Ace Attorney or Layton, even.
Trova, I forgot his name. The guy who made Braid told me that all his stuff was very subversive and about the atomic bomb.
That was him really just trying to claim that, oh, look at me, I did Mario but gave it nuance. And yet no one really remembers it. In fact, it's only really remembered because of the Dorkly sketch that pretty much was taken.
I partially joke because I still remember, again, Braid, despite the pretensions, he's still a perfectly competent game on its own. And I do enjoy also the Witness by the same person. It's just the attitude of the person behind it. But we're going off
mind you,
track.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just mainly talking about how,
it's also memorability. Anyway, again, the story in itself of the game is perfectly fine also on its own. I have to admit, despite the themes fucking up towards the end because of what he explained, I argue 13 has the better setting and story. This has some interesting things, talking about the immortals, what it means to live forever, witnessing the rising and fall of civilizations, But I don't know, the ideas of, the creation of the falsies, the seas, and humans in the mythos of the Fabula Nova Crystallis, it has a bit of more of an edge. There was a problem of execution, but I think here is more, the creation of the setting has less bite to it.
If you'll allow me, it's not even just the execution, it's the fact that most of that lore, which is very interesting, is not even in that first game. We only have to wait until the third game for them to finally explain the lore in the games themselves.
Well, technically speaking, also Type 0 if you play that.
Okay, but in terms of the 13 we had to wait until other games came out before we can finally get that lore. That's the thing. I also agree with you that lore is really cool, but it's not even in that game that you just mentioned. That's the problem.
And keep in mind, we probably weren't going to get that lore originally because, we only got a lot of the sequel stuff.
If the original plan with the original 13 had panned out and that game sold 10 million units, to this day, a lot of people wouldn't even know about the lore because, again, that first game doesn't have anything, or at least most of it, at least. Go on.
What are you talking about, Pedro? The power of friendship explains all.
Of course. Go on, too.
I digress.
Like I said, I'm just glad that things exist. I'll complain about how I got there later about that. Okay, when it comes instead to the characters, they're all relatively fine, except I argue Sarah. Sarah is just the weakest link. She has an interesting backstory, especially the fact that she's connected to Kaim and by extension also the children. But after you gather in the party, she's just there.
Yeah.
She has glances. Funny enough, the video essay that I watched and when I showed it to Pedro, I linked to Pedro, they argue that Ming is actually the weakest link in the party, but I genuinely disagree. Like, Sarah really is just more bland. And again, at the very least, Ming gets a dream.
Ming gets that final dream, and that entire dream completely shapes her up, and you completely understand her character completely just with that dream alone.
And Sarah had potential. She becomes the evil witch, essentially. It would have been cool to see her development into that, essentially.
No, I'm with Teo. I have no idea what the hell that guy's talking about.
But again, that's basically my opinion on the matter. Most of the rest of the party is basically fine. We don't really... Another disconnection between the dreams and the main game is that the dreams hype up said as to being, mixed species, the son of an immortal and the last remaining of the white-winged clan. But there's nothing in the game that suggests that he has anything in particular that I guess his intuition and, knack for machines, I guess, but nothing really screams to me this is, the last remnant of, a proud angelic-esque warrior race.
It's a Nera that's the last of that wing clan.
But he's the father, consequentially said, being the son of him, is now the last remnant of that.
Okay, I guess.
But again, this doesn't really scream to me anything. That is just a mortal like anyone else. His bonding with Tolten is nice and everything, but it's about multiverse social class rather than, who they descend from. There's also another thing. Despite the interesting premise about the political aspect, a lot of the rulers of the different states get dealt with relatively quickly. Particularly, Gongora manages to, dispatch the entire Senate, in Uhra very easily for his, coup d'etat. And also, when it comes to Gotza, we see what happens. We meet the king, get his backstory, and then we see him, frozen today in less than, an hour tops, That's really a bit rushed, if you ask me. Yes, thanks to, Ming and, General Kakan, Lumara is the kingdom that gets the most, development, technically, But unfortunately, I get the idea there should have been potentially a bit more. Sakaguchi is perfectly fine in writing, at least on a surface level, political themes, but he's not Matsuno.
No.
And don't really say this as too much derogatory, but it's just that Matsuno is on a better level, unless he has to write children. More on that if we ever get to Tactics Advance. And now let me talk also about Gongora while I'm at it, because again, I'm still standing on what I said in the final part. He's a very entertaining villain, but I argue it really feels like he's missing a step. And I think I found an interesting metaphor to describe what I think about that. Imagine in Final Fantasy VI, technically speaking, Emperor Gestalt and Kefka were more instead of one character, a composite character that incorporated both of them. And that one stayed the villain until the end, but the story progresses the way that you feel like it should have happened in the original game, as in at one point Emperor Gestalt should have been killed and betrayed by someone else who took over. That's kind of what it feels like here, in a way. It feels like Gongora should have gone through all the way, but after his defeat, he gets swept away like a puppet, and, whatever force has been piloting, him, maybe, again, a force of corruption or malice, stays there. Again, as much as I did groan back in the day when I did call about it, Destroy taking over after Nene died, not only made sense, not only was foreshadowed, but it makes for a more interesting final boss. So, and one thing, Blue Dragon technically got it a bit better over this, I would say. But at the very least, Gongora compensates by being at least, enjoyable. Every time he's on screen, he dares to you to not listen to him, and I wouldn't. But and let me also use this to talk about the ending, the sacrifice a bit, because I think I had a bit of a realization between parts, and I think the entire reason why it's Seth, it's once again the thing that has been, memed to death, but it's a thing. It's Sakaguchi having to represent the fact that his mother passed away.
Yep.
I genuinely think it's possibly because of that, with Seth being a stand-in for him, Seth being his mother, and him losing her when he thinks, he should spend more time with her, but still feeling her in the wind or something. I think at the end of the day, it's probably that, because I still stay on my point that I think it feels a bit too arbitrary, or at the very least, it should have been foreshadowed better. I'm sorry. Either that or pick someone else like Tolkien. I provided, a perfect type of motivation for an alternative for this.
My best guess is the mentality was, only an immortal can do it. Granted, they never say that, so for all you know, it could have been Tolton. And I feel like it would have been better justified keeping Tolton around if we at least got to see him now doing a better job ruling his kingdom, but we don't.
We can only hope. Well, to be fair, Joe, there's one thing Sakaguchi, to an extent, Square loved, was referencing Star Wars. And the ending of A New Hope, even at the end of, episode 6, still leaves things, on with a question mark on how things will turn out. Just, this giving you the idea that you can be hopeful for the future, specifically for this. So there is that. It's that kind of writing, basically, at the end of the day. When it comes to Kaim as a protagonist, it's kind of interesting because Kaim is a bit of an exception. You will think you will compare it to people like Squall or Cloud because, stoic person. But he drops that and gets emotion very quickly, but at the same time still retains a bit of that. He's very complex, and especially showcased in the 1,000-Year Dream. He decides to remain close all the time, but he knows when to get emotional, and so a lot of times doesn't know what to do. He's not shown to be invincible, despite the fact that he's immortal, and a lot of times he doesn't know what to do and needs the help of others. So he's not even too much of a Gary Stew, despite being immortal. Again, I don't really have a Final Fantasy protagonist to compare him to, if I have to be honest. Because he's relatively unique for this kind of build, despite having some traits, minor traits from our previous protagonist. So I genuinely kind of like him. the fact that he remains stoic a lot of the time is being that he doesn't actually have a lot of dialogue in this game, and a lot of the heavy lifting has to be done by Seth. But I don't mind too much that, you know. When it comes, which also reminds me to talk about when it comes, I forgot about the presentation. Yeah, the voice acting is perfectly fine. I bothered to check a bit, not a lot, but a bit how the game is voiced in my country, and they did a perfectly fine job. You know, like I said, it's a relatively such a unique case, but you know, it's still welcome, I guess. Again, the other characters are technically fine. You know, I didn't even mind it too much, believe it or not, the separation that happens in Gotsa. Yes, it is contrived in a couple of places, but I didn't mind it as much as I probably should have, you know, with the children stashing away in the train. I've seen a lot of times dumber reasons to split the party, which leads me to my last bit. Throughout the entire game, I kept being reminded of, you know, something similar. Not necessarily, you know, a first-party game, but another RPG that was an Xbox 360 exclusive for a while. That would be a game that I recorded in the past, Eternal Sonata. That one did manage to have a lot more color and, technically speaking, a bit of a more interesting gameplay than this, despite the fact that it wasn't exactly turn-based, you know. But as a result, the plot event was lacking a lot, using the excuse of, oh, it's a dream, to not have a lot of things, including like a war map. Well, instead, this game manages to be a lot more fleshed. You get to understand better the geography, and, you know, even the characters are more in-depth than that. So it's just basically an observation. It's not even too much of a case of, you know, comparing much of the two outside of these factors. It's just that they had similar circumstances, but it also showcased, like I said, how turbulent of a time for, you know, Japanese-made RPGs was the panorama back then for all the people. So, at the end of the day, yeah, I still like this a lot more than Blue Dragon, obviously. And yes, this will be probably re-released. I don't think this needs a remake treatment, especially because these days a lot of people tend to be more sensible towards the touches that remakes do. And I don't mean plot-wise, even on a graphical level. Let's say that they try to listen to one of my points and make it more colorful, you know. I can imagine a lot of people will not be pleased by that, you know, even if we put a filter that would, you know, mimic the game's original appearance. So even just a simple, you know, conversion that, you know, upscales properly the game, you know, and has a stable 60 frames per second would be perfectly fine to me, you know. And obviously that includes all the DLCs, you know,
Same.
not just the dreams of stuff, but there were a couple of extra minor dungeons, you know, that were present. So, you know, those would be fun to have gone.
I was just saying, I agree. I definitely see it more likely we'd get a remaster that more or less keeps the same audio and whatnot, just merges stuff in, maybe touches up the fidelity a bit, but otherwise keeps it the same while adding in the DLC.
But I think I'm pretty much done. Again, it's a fun experience, and actually, I'm interested to see what Last Story actually has to offer eventually. Pedro?
For me personally, what I would love to be proven wrong, I don't think we're ever going to get a remaster for this, because that would require Microsoft to give a shit about this game, and I don't really have any faith in that happening. But oh well. As for the game itself, no, I really enjoy it a lot still, even to this day. It has its issues, like my co-commentators have talked about. Some elements could have been better fleshed out, and clearly the game was not finished properly, because you can tell where certain corners were cut. But I will argue that the overall experience is still really, really positive. Especially, yes, in the dreams, where the writing by Kiyoshi Shigematsu is absolutely amazing, full of emotion, full of great theming. The game designers also do a good job in enhancing the writing by providing some really good backgrounds, some of Uematsu's best music in the game, and even the way the text itself shows up on screen just adds a little extra touch of personality to the dreams. That would have been a lot, but that's why I get the feeling that's why we don't have this as a book, because if you put it in as a book, yes, it would still be great writing, but you would not have the music and the effects that enhance it in the game, I will argue. So I will argue a book version of this would be a lesser version of the experience in comparison to how when you experience them in the game. That being said, now the 1,000 Years of Dreams feature is absolutely stunning and is a true demonstration. It's the best storytelling the game has to offer. All of them, especially fleshing out Kaim's background by really illustrating what these 1,000 years have done to him before the game started. So yeah, everything about the dreams is great. I still think the main plot is still pretty good for what it is. It's not it's nothing amazing, like we've said. Like I said, you're alternating between pretty good writing, and then you see a dream coming up. Oh great, now amazing writing now. So like I said, it's the inconsistency. I think that's the word that I was looking for. Inconsistency. That you're constantly jumping between two levels of quality. That's what happens. Obviously it would be great if in fact in hindsight maybe it would have been better for Sakaguchi to draw the story but just let Shinya Yamatsu write the entire script for this. Would have been interesting, but well, what can you do? I really like all the characters. I mean, yeah, like Theo said, yeah, Sarah is not exactly a deep character, but at the same time she doesn't drag the story down, I'll argue. I mean, yeah, she I like her design, but yeah, like Theo said, yeah, she's just there after her initial intro, and after she joins the party, she's basically just there. That being said, all the other characters are really enjoyable. That stupid moment in Goats aside, the kids are really enjoyable kid characters for what they are. Tolton and Zed are also enjoyable enough. I mean, they're nothing amazing, but I don't think that's really the point anyway. But obviously, of the mortals, the highlight is Jensen. Not only because his character arc is genuinely well done, but also because Michael's performance is absolutely fantastic. He completely steals the show every time he's on screen. Michael's improvisation is fantastic. Again, moments like the one, oh, okay, okay, and now kiss at the end, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is my favorite part. Again, you can always tell when it's Michael improvising because there's just that spontaneity to a lot of the stuff, and it adds, and it perfectly fits the character that Sakaguchi envisioned, while at the same time giving it that spontaneity really makes the character feel genuine in a lot of ways. Like, for example, his reaction when Ming kisses him for the first time. Like, I can only imagine. I have to wonder what came first, Michael's improvisation or the animation, because I get the feeling Michael's improvisation came first. I really get the feeling that they heard Michael's performance and they animate to that, because that's great. So yeah, Jensen is a highlight, definitely. But the other three immortals are all highlights. Like I said, thanks to the 1,000 Years Dream feature, Kaim is a fantastic protagonist who slowly but surely recovers his humanity that he lost before Gongora took his memories. And I especially love the final cutscene before the end credits shows up, where Kaim tells Sarah, well, Sarah, should we go for one more millennium? Eternity's not so bad. Again, it's a perfect cap off to everything his story was. So really great. And Seth is also a fantastic character. She's such a great badass pirate character. Her ending is a bit iffy, like people have said, yeah. But overall, she's just a great character overall. Her two-part dream is really excellent. Tara Strong, despite her as a person being, recently kind of losing respect for people, she doesn't change the fact that she's still a great voice actress all around, and she does a fantastic job playing Seth. Definitely a much better character for her than Kluk from Blue Dragon, which basically gave her nothing to work with. Like I said, I fully agree with Teo. I have no idea what that YouTuber who said Ming is the weak link is saying. Sarah's definitely the weak link of the Immortals. Here's the thing: even before Ming's dream comes up, Ming at the very least still has her kingdom going on. She has that moment where she tests Jensen. When Jensen, quote unquote, thinks he kidnaps her, but in actuality, it's just her letting him do it to test him. So Ming still has more going on with her, even in the main story, way more than Sarah does. And yes, like I said, the final dream, entirely focused on Ming, does a fantastic job explaining her backstory and her background and fleshing out her character, and perfectly doing a great job making her a great character. So, again, it's all thanks to Kiyoshi Shigematsu's. The fact that only one dream is enough to turn Ming into a great character shows how brilliant Shigematsu's writing is in these dreams. The fact that it took only that, that alone is a great testament to the quality of the writing of these dreams. So yeah, I have no idea what the hell that YouTuber's talking about. No, clearly.
My best guess to his logic might be that he sees Sarah as kind of sharing the arc with Kaim. That's the only way I could
thing,
really...
Joe, I can tell you the person in question, I can mention that they made this point, Majular, did not really talk that much about Sarah, aside from, being the last party member, immortal party member you recruit. His observation towards Ming is that he believed that the performance of the voice actress and the actions of a character did not felt as important and compelling as the rest of the team. That was basically his point. I still disagree. I can see a bit where he was coming from, because but it almost feels like the character of Ming should be judged only by when her memories are repressed, because remember, for a good chunk of the game, she actually has that.
I guess the most I could give them is that technically, when you get down to it, Numara doesn't really get to factor too much into the main narrative. Like, they don't really get drawn into the war. Kakanis is dealt with pretty much independently of the whole Gongora situation, so... And mind you, that is not even me saying that I agree. I'm just trying to see the logic. Like, I guess you could maybe argue that technically Ming's stuff doesn't affect the main plot as much. Even if that's the case, I don't think that's enough to call her the weakest link. Like, mind you, I don't think any of them are bad characters, but if I did have to designate one, yeah, that would definitely have to be Sarah. Not Ming.
Yeah. Yeah. And the themes of this... Like, for me, it's one of those things where... While it is true that, to throw Teo a bone, like, while it is true that the overall lore of the Fabula Nova Crystallis saga is overall has more potential to it and is a lot more interesting, like I've said, the major problem was that I have no idea what they were planning when they planned the Fabula Nova Crystallis saga, but the fact that they kept so much of the lore either on data logs or just even outside of the game itself, in general, a lot of the up until Lightning Returns and, like Teo said, Type 0, that was their major mistake. If they had just made that shit the focal point of the games, maybe we could be singing a different tune right now. But yeah, I will agree that the Fabula Nova Crystallis mythos is definitely something that's a lot more in terms of compared to the mythology of this game. This game, I will argue that that's not really important, because this game is not really focusing on mythology. It's more focusing on backstory. That's the primary source of depth that the story comes from. The backstory of Kaim, the backstory of the world, and the various stories that explore these themes of war, living, the value of life, the fact that everything has value. Again, the similar themes to, like, I recommend those who like themes. I love stories with themes like these. Those of you who like these themes as much as I do, I recommend watching the anime Freedom Beyond Journey's End in Crunchyroll, which explores similar themes. Not in the same style, but it does have a character that also learns that the value of life is everywhere. Yeah, no, I love the themes explored in all of these dreams, and even in the story itself. Like I said, like it's definitely a much better. This thing, it definitely does the whole, what, like, even though I enjoyed Snow's arc in Lightning Returns, definitely this game explores the whole what eternity does to a person thing a lot better. Like,
I imagine such.
So yeah, while there's not so much in terms of mythology and lore in this game, I will argue it makes up for it with backstory. Because the backstory aspect is delivered excellently, so I will argue it makes up for it. It's a more character-driven game in comparison to something like a Final Fantasy Tactics or something like that. So yeah, no, as for the presentation, the music is fantastic, of course. It's not my favorite Uematsu soundtrack. I still hold Final Fantasy VI as his masterpiece, his unquestionable, untouchable masterpiece of a soundtrack. Final Fantasy VI is like unimpeachable as one of the greatest soundtracks ever put on any piece of media ever, with Final Fantasy IX being his close second to me. This one I'll probably put it... top 5 probably. I'll have to think about it more, but probably top 5 Uematsu soundtracks. It's not as extensive, another thing. Like this soundtrack is only 2 discs long, so it doesn't have as many tracks. I guess that's maybe why, because in Final Fantasy VI, I have literally 4 discs worth of so many great tracks. Where it really is one of those. Final Fantasy VI in 9, in my opinion, is one of the where you really get a soundtrack that is full of quantity and quality, in my opinion. But still, this is still an excellent soundtrack, regardless. Presentation. I personally don't mind the way the game looks. I think it looks appropriate for the kind of tone they're going for. I wouldn't want this to look like Blue Dragon, because the very kid-oriented shonen style that Blue Dragon went with, in my opinion, wouldn't really fit the tone and themes that Sakaguchi is going for in this game, honestly. I think the more gritty the more gritty heart style, I think, fits the tone of this better. Not to say
I'm
that...
curious, have you ever read Vagabond?
What is that again? Could you repeat that, please?
Remember Vagabond, the series that the mangaka that did the art style for this.
Oh, that. No, I have not. No. Well, keep in mind. Remind me. I'm pretty sure he only did the character designs for this. He didn't create. He wasn't the art director, so I don't think.
I don't remember about that. But let me put it this way: the body proportions and facial designs are basically the same.
Well, again, if the guy excels at that style, fine by him. I don't know. I'll have to watch it for myself. Read it for myself too. Maybe I'll take a look at it eventually. That being said, no. I was talking more about art. The character designs are all great, in my opinion. Like Seth looks great. Kaim, yeah, you can argue that Kaim looks more on the plain side. But considering his character and his background, I think the design works well. An extravagant design wouldn't really fit Kaim, not really. Jensen looks great. Sarah's not a great character, but she does have a good design that I like, at least. So yeah, character design's great. The art direction, like I was talking about, I think the look is fine. Yes, he maybe could have been a bit more colorful in some aspects here and there, but I will argue again. It's not to the same extent as Gears of War or something like that, because with Gears of War, I can understand. I personally think I still preferred the art direction of the original Gears of War trilogy over the new games by the Coalition, because yes, the new ones are more colorful, but that's the problem. Like it takes away from the gritty, desperate, apocalyptic nature that made the original trilogy so compelling. So while I appreciate that a lot of people prefer more colorful art directions over more muted art directions, I still think that there are games where the more muted coloring does fit. And I will argue this one fits well enough, because this is meant to be a more not dark, but like a more depressing game with the themes that it tackles. So having this be super duper colorful wouldn't really fit, in my opinion. Like I said, it depends on what kind of tone and atmosphere you're going for. If you're doing a Gears of War type game, and by that I mean the original trilogy, yes, go for that muted, gritty, gray art style, because that will actually fit with the kind of tone you're going for. It's all about tone and atmosphere. That's about it. I think the visuals look really good for a 360 game. I think. I think that's about it. Like I said, really a very good game. Very good. Maybe occasionally it rises into greatness every time we go into a dream. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Definitely my favorite of the post Square Enix Sakaguchi games. I haven't played Fantasian yet since the new version is not out yet. We'll see how that turns out. And hey,
there's Last Story as well.
Last Story, I enjoy Last Story, not as much as this though. I will tell you that much. It's better than Blue Dragon, at least. I can tell you that. It's a very least better than Blue Dragon, at least.
And these are all games he made under Xbox, or was it just Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey?
No, Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey. Last Story was made with Nintendo. For Nintendo.
And Fantasia?
It was published by Nintendo themselves in Japan and Europe, and in America it was published by Exceed. I'm guessing Nintendo of America. Go on, sorry.
Fantasia was self-published, but it was released temporarily as an Apple Arcade exclusive. Now the proper international release, as we know, is now published by Square Enix. So we've gone full circle.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That being said, like I said, it's a very good game. Like I've said, I would love to be proven wrong, but I don't think I will. I have zero faith that Microsoft will actually... We already know that Sakaguchi is not interested in making a remaster of this, which means Microsoft is our only hope.
That's a shame. I wonder why.
You have no idea how...
Remember, some Japanese developers don't really care much about the concept of preservation of all properties. From Software is kind of having the same problem right now.
Yeah. Remember, the reason we have a Dark Souls 1 remaster was because that was entirely Namco Bandai's initiative. From Software had nothing to do with it.
I wonder if it's going to be a classic case of the Japanese devs losing their files.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that really doesn't matter.
Well, to be fair... Sorry, go on.
It is a factor, a lot of times, Jovan, but, a developer or a publisher can actually at least give a try to, plow through that kind of problem.
Lost Odyssey, I don't think Lost Odyssey falls in that category, though. I'm pretty confident Microsoft still has the source code in there somewhere. Because this game came out in 2008. By that point, even Japanese developers knew better to save their source code. I'm confident the source code for this is still somewhere in Microsoft's archives. But like I said, I have zero faith in Microsoft caring enough to remaster this thing. Even a basic conversion, that would require them to even care, and I don't think they do. But again, like I said, trust me. If in the next Xbox showing they reveal that they're remastering this, trust me, I will applaud just like everybody does, and I will be gladly happy to admit that I was wrong. I just don't think I will.
Only time will tell.
All right, and that was Lost Odyssey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this as much as we have. We're not going to do Last Story after this because I have other RPG ventures that I want to explore. So
we'll probably see before that, Legend of Dragoon, which I will do at some point. So see you for that.
See ya.
That's